This is a 2-inch crosscut section of basswood. Now, I've never turned basswood before, so I thought this might be an interesting challenge. Not because it's hard, it's actually a very soft, very nice wood to carve on. But it's all end grain, so I wasn't sure how it was going to react on the lathe. As it turned out, my concerns were unwarranted because this was an absolute joy to turn. And it was fairly interesting in its own way. I'll point that out later. As it says on the screen, I'm using a 1/8 in diameter, about a 1/2 inch long straight bit to route this pattern out. I'm showing it here in real time, and then I'll speed it up. This took a few hours to do. I didn't notice though while I was doing it. So the way I maintain control of the router, going around curves and back and forth on straight lines, is I use the heel of one hand as a pivot point. I keep it firmly in place and do most of the pushing and pulling, back, forth, sideways motion with the other hand. And I switch back and forth from hand to hand quite often. Just depends on how the pattern flows. So I researched a lot of patterns in regards to St. Patrick's Day, and this is one that came up frequently, and the St. Patrick's cross also came up frequently, so I incorporated that into the pattern in the middle. And once you pour the resin, you got to go over it with a heat gun or a torch frequently, not just once, just to eliminate the bubbles. I did not use a pressure pot for this application. I just let it cure out in the open for a good 24 hours. So as usual, I've mounted this so that I can work on the bottom of the bowl first. I don't have to make it round because I'm going to make a natural edge bowl or a live edge bowl. But the first thing I do is mark for the mortise. And I've marked the tip of this parting tool at about 3/16 of an inch so that I don't go any deeper. I've only got so much resin thickness to play with. And then I form the mortise and then start working on the shape of the bottom of the bowl. I mentioned earlier that it was interesting the way this end grain reacted. I don't think there was any shaving at all that came off of this bowl. It's all just particles. It's all, well, you can see it. It's just sawdust, lathe dust. And you would think because there's no shavings that there would be a lot of tear out going on. But this basswood, I just love turning it. It was just butter smooth. Hardly any tear out whatsoever. All those shavings that you're seeing there, that's all resin. None of that was wood. I started my sanding with 220 grit, if that tells you anything about how this wood reacted. Super sharp gouges. Friendly wood, not like that beast I turned last week. Makes for a really good time at the lathe. Before I start working on the inside of this bowl, let's take a look at what some subscribers have made. So much talent in this audience. Rob McGrath, his first turn was on an oak end grain piece, and it turned out great. Tough chunk of wood. And Bert Thomas. So he made this for a charity called Beads of Courage. Check it out. It's worthy. Good job, Bert. Harry Van de Mortel made these. There's a lot of talent going on there, Harry. Very nicely done. And I hope I pronounced your name correctly. And I want to take this time also to thank all of my subscribers. I really appreciate every single one of you. You're the fuel to my fire. The first thing I'm doing on the top side of the bowl here is establishing the rim. My goal is to have a nice, even, thin quarter-inch rim, and I don't want to damage the bark at all. So once I've got that close to where I want it, I start working on the inside of the bowl, taking the meat out, kind of slowly taking it down layer by layer, looking for color. In other words, looking for resin. Color is what I said. It's always exciting when that first color shows through. If you notice, there was a couple of cracks in there, and those cracks are all resin filled, so there's no issues whatsoever. Just worked out perfectly. It's always a little bit of a mystery, a little bit exciting once you get down to that color. You never know if the resin has reacted properly, if it's going to have bubbles in it. You just don't know what's going on the inside of the wood either. So it's always a little bit of a surprise, and it worked out great. Real happy with this. This whole thing is end grain, so it's really soaking up this shellac. I put it on nice and thick so it's well protected. And once I let that dry for a good while, I followed up with a nice coat of carnauba wax. So the end result is it's more of a satin shine, but it's a nice thick coat. Food safe. Thanks for watching. Semper Fi.